Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for choosing this talk. I know there's so many amazing talks to choose from, so it's an honor that you've chosen this one. I guess if you are here, maybe you are planning to be a manager, or you are taking your first steps, or you are just plainly interested in know how this works. So hopefully we can answer this today. Ideally, we should be aware that this is a very young industry, and we are still learning how these things work. We're figuring things out. If you pay attention to the way we do things, we have inherited so much from cinema or from software development and other industries. So we're taking some things and we're changing them to suit us, but we're still evolving and learning. Also, we're so tied to technology that it really emphasizes for an open mind and an open approach. So hopefully we can learn and exchange today about those things. And hopefully we can reach out, you can reach out to me and we can talk about these things. If this talk exists, it's because I want to share what I've learned in my first years in management, what I learned from other people, and what I've seen from other statistics. So putting all those three things together, what we can learn and hopefully prevent some mistakes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself really quickly. I'm Marc. I'm a lead animator at Lab 42 Games, which is part of the Sumo Group. You'll find lots of amazing Sumo Group people at GTC. And originally, I didn't do animation. I studied business. I went there, and I quickly realized that wasn't for me. It was very gray and dull, at least the way they were doing those things. And so I went to what I really like, which is cinema. I went to cinema, I studied cinema, and then I found out about animation, and then I realized that I could make games, which is what I truly like. And that leaves me in this interesting spot where I really like the management side of business, and I really like the animation and the art and video games. So hopefully we can put those two things together and find out some interesting things. I want to begin this with a quote of a friend of mine. She is in human resources. Let me show you this first. I like using, and it will be quite useful for us. We'll be using some memes because they emphasize, they summarize a very complex thing in an image, very straightforward. So as we can see our cat friend here, he used to be a great coder, and he's been dragged into that management promotion. And now he's just stuck doing meetings, interviews, discussions, etc. So he can't code anymore. That's one thing that happens in the industry, and that's why hopefully we can talk later, because maybe you've been through that, or you know someone who's been through that. So let me quote my friend. She is from human resources. She doesn't do any video game development, and she used to be in other industries, and she joined the video game industry like a year ago. So it was a very interesting perspective, and we were talking about what we do right and what we do wrong. And she said one very interesting thing, and she said, the most common mistake in this industry is skilled individuals put into management roles. So we have this belief, this thing that we just do in the industry that's dragging, like our poor friend here, dragged into a management position just because he's a very skilled individual. It can be code, it can be 3D animation, it can be 2D art, it can be anything. But we have this tradition, this thing of dragging those people, and maybe they are not in the right place, and maybe they don't feel comfortable. So that was a very interesting take from an outsider of our industry. We need to understand that it's two different set of skills. Being a coder or being a manager is two different things, and it requires two completely different things. And you can see also, you may know great managers that probably they are not that great 3D artists or 3D animators or designers. But they are great managers, so they have that skill. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the communication, how important it is, and those key skills that we need. So now is the clickbait moment that I say. And I say, if you are a manager or you're planning to be a manager, you are probably going to regret it. You can say, click here to find out why. And I'll tell you now. There's this very interesting survey that the Workforce Institute did last year. Maybe you read it, maybe you heard about it through the talk. Let me quote, they found out that 47% of middle managers are likely to quit this 2023 because of stress-related reasons. Of course, this was last year. And we can observe two important things here in this survey. So it says 47%. 47% is huge, is half of it. So that means that we're doing something clearly wrong. And also it says for stress-related reasons. And nowadays we need to understand that beliefs, likes, and the society as a whole changes, and we need to adapt with that. Probably 30 years ago, mental well-being or well-being in general wasn't so important. But now through this survey, we find out that people appreciate that and they value that, and they rather have less pay in a role with less responsibility, but at least they preserve their mental well-being and their mental health. And we are struggling to keep up with that luckily, new way of saying things. Okay. Before we dive into exactly what is part of that 47%, how to prevent being part of that 47%, I want to talk about is a manager. What is a manager taking those first steps? What is a middle manager in this case? And to do that, because it's a very gray area, we don't really know. You've been there, probably you know someone, maybe you're doing a little bit of, you continue doing design, you are doing some documentation, you're doing interviews, you are leading a team where it's very gray area. We don't know how much you're supposed to do. Maybe you're not doing any, let's say, 3D work at all. So let's see what the dictionary says, so we are all on the same page. And I went to the Oxford Dictionary, and it says, a middle manager is a manager who is in charge of a small group of people or a small department within the business organization. And it goes on to say, compared with top executives, middle managers are likely to have more time to interact with their employees. And that's the blessing we have in those 3 steps that we're taking, is that we have the opportunity to interact more with the employees, and we have a closer approach than top executives to the business organization, to the team, to the project we're working on. And we are very lucky to be able to do that. Now, we'll see that communication is crucial, but let's dive into that 47%. What happens? Why? Where does that come from? So as I said before, from surveys, with exchanging with friends, with colleagues, with other professionals, and probably I bother some of you here to see how was your experience. I narrowed down to 3 main things, and you can also consult that with the Workforce Institute. 3 main things that are the cause of that 47%. There are many. There are as many as people in this room. But one of the main ones is this thing that we do in the industry. Now, this is the wearing 2 hats that I call. It's something that is not wrong in its essence. It's the fact, like we saw the cat in our previous slide, in the first one, which is when we do 2 things at the same time. For instance, I'm a 3D animator. I continue doing animations while I start taking care of some management responsibilities. And that has positives. That's the way we've been doing, and it has a clear strengths. For instance, that we can stay closer to the team. We know exactly what is going on, what pipeline are we using, what software are you using, any problems, any blockers, and we have that middle management position that we saw before in the dictionary, that we can actually interact, and we have a closer knowledge of what's going on. And that's great. That's a good thing we're wearing 1 hat. But then we're wearing the other hat. So let's say we are a 3D character artist, and we are creating 100 characters a day, like super prolific. And now we are starting taking some management responsibilities. And that's the great area that we were talking about before when it comes to management. We maybe are doing some interviews, as I said before. And then we are hiring someone and we're doing some mentorship, like telling them how to do things, how our pipelines work. And then we are doing some documentation for these new people. And then at the same time, we continue to do those 100 assets a day. And you can clearly see how this can end up wrong. The big problem with this is it's doable. You can do it. You can continue to create those 100 assets a day while continue with your new tasks. It's possible. And that's the main risk, because you can do it, but the question is for how long can you do it? How long can you keep up? And that's when we see that 47% of people who, this is a very sneaky issue that we find. Before you know it, you are overwhelmed and torn between two worlds, like this poor friend. That's a classic thing that happens. And the other thing, since we're talking about this very gray area in the management side, is that you will be doing a few interviews, 3, 4. How long is that going to take? Okay, it may take 30 minutes, but then you need some time to evaluate those candidates and to exchange with other people that may be interested. How long is that going to take? Is that going to be half an hour? Is it going to be an hour? Is it going to be 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings? So quickly it can balloon and it can overwhelm you, and it can take over. And especially if you continue to perform as you were performing before with those 100 assets a day, let's say. In this case, I usually find that the worst enemy is yourself, that you struggle to realize that you are doing 2 things at the same time, and you should understand that it's too much. So the burnout. Burnout is a key element. Next, this. This is a stigma or a belief that we have in the industry. Something that has become natural. It's an assumption that we have that career progression for skilled individuals, as we saw before, means a management role or going to some management responsibilities and leadership. Probably that shouldn't be the case. We're seeing some probably big studios realizing that as not correct. But we have this belief that because you are very good at what you do, code, 3D animation, design, production, it's a natural progression to become, take care of some management responsibilities. And I've seen some brave people. The way to prevent this is being very assertive and very clear that they don't want to do that. And they just want to continue doing what they are really good at. So we see this thing that we have this belief, this natural progression, and we are removing the really skilled people from what they do best and from what they want to do. You've seen, and probably you know someone, or you've been through that you were very happy, as a Kat at the very beginning of the presentation, that he was very happily coding, he's the best coder, and they being dragged away, just because that's the natural progression. So at least some companies are waking up. We see at Sumo we have some other paths, or some companies that just continue. You can continue to be a senior. You don't really need to progress into a lead or some other management positions. But it's a very, very sad thing that we remove people where they're happy. Maybe they just don't want to do this. They don't like it, or they don't have the skills, and they are not interested. I became an animator to be an animator. I became a designer to be a designer. I don't want to be dealing with these other things. So that's something very important to keep in mind. And now, the other side of this same coin, which is this. Unfortunately, I've talked, and I know very amazing people that they would be absolutely great middle managers, or they will have a very successful management career. They think they are not good enough. That is in itself a good thing, because they put value into what it means to be a manager. They realize they will have a lot of responsibility, and we can make a big difference, a big positive difference or negative difference in the team. So the fact that they value, the fact that they understand the weight of the role, and they don't feel safe enough to, or capable enough to fill those shoes, it means that they really appreciate the role and they take it seriously. So maybe if you are in that position, maybe it is actually for you. And it's very sad because we are not empowering lots of people like this that are, and we're missing out. We're missing out on great managers. Let me see where we are. Yes, I want to share a little example quickly of a friend of mine. And he's from college. He was in finance. He is in finance. And he had the worst managers that you can even imagine. And what I like what he said, we were discussing how they do things there and how we do things in the game industry. And he said, he had the worst managers. He said, the fact that you care, the fact that someone tries to improve, we may do it wrong, we may make mistakes, but the fact that we say, okay, what have we done wrong? How can we improve it? Just that fact, that already puts you way ahead of many other managers that they don't care, they are not interested, or they are just in that position because of career progression or because it just happened to be there. So the fact of caring, the fact of being interested, that already makes a huge difference. So the last spot that I want to talk about, the last point about that 47% is this. And it's a tricky one. When probably you're taking those first steps, you will be either promoted or maybe you change jobs and you're going to another company and you will jump into an already working machine. Even if you're starting a studio from scratch, probably you have investors or you have partners. But this applies mainly to those promotions, changing companies. You may join there and then you may find very unethical or toxic or just plainly bad, negative practices. And we have plenty of examples in the game industry, so we don't need to talk about that. It can be from crunch or toxic behavior or harassment. And the danger of taking those first steps in a place like that is that you may end up normalizing it and become a new normal for you. And the problem is that you will take the new normal with you and you will take it to other places, to other industries and to other jobs that you may have. And so it's a very risky one and it requires a lot of, a very strong moral compass and a very strong personality to not be sucked into that. Because again, all these 3 points are very sneaky, that they just, before you know it, they are part of you. And it takes strength to realize that it's wrong and not to be sucked into that and not normalizing it. And just a quick note, because I prepared this months ago, but last week I watched for the first time The Devil Wears Prada. I never watched that movie before. And if you watch it, you will understand perfectly what I mean here. And if you haven't and you watch it, you will see. But pretty much, I was surprised. I was like, oh, this is exactly this. It's the protagonist joins a company with very questionable ethics, and she despises it, but by the halfway through the movie, she's fully into that, and she soaked the ethics of the company, and she became absolutely that. So it's a good example. Now, with all these negative, all these pitfalls, all this narrow path that we need to follow in those first steps, how to do it right and how not to be part of that 47%, I want to dedicate a little bit of how to, now that we're here, we're already in the dance, let's dance, how to do this properly. So how are we our best managers? The easy first exercise would be thinking about your managers that you liked or disliked, and you have already a good example. How would you do things? How would you change things the moment that you were communicating something and you were ignored, or many other examples I think I would do those things different. So that's already a great start. Also, as I said before, is an industry that continues to grow, continues to morph into different things. So this that we are doing right here, communicating, exchanging, and learning from each other is very important. It is. So one of the things I said at the very beginning was about well-being and how well-being is very important nowadays and how we take it very seriously. Probably wasn't the case 40 years ago or longer. Luckily now we care about those things. We saw how some people prefer to have less pay but keep mental sanity. And that is a change that we are struggling to adapt. Especially some people have been doing this for a long time. We all heard the stories, oh yeah, I used to crunch 12 hours a day and that was the best thing and that was great. But that's not the thing anymore, luckily. At least we're trying to prevent that. So another statistic from UKG this time, from the UK, they consulted employees and they said, let me quote, 1 in 3 employees say that managers fail to recognize the impact they have on their team's mental health. And that's precisely what we're talking about. We are struggling to realize that that's very important and that we have a big weight when it comes to that. Whatever happens in that team, whatever happens in our project, it will be carried over. We need to understand that the responsibility is very big. Whatever happens there, it will influence the private lives, the family life, friends, hobbies, etc. We spend lots of time at work, and it's a very important part of our lives, and we can affect the whole world of a person if we don't do things properly. I mean, if we do things properly, we may affect it in a positive way. You've probably been through something like that, so you can relate. So how do we do this properly? How can we understand, evaluate, and properly care about the well-being? And I put holistic because I'm not talking just about mental well-being and mental health. I'm talking about everything, from physical, social, spiritual. It's really important. How do we do this properly? The first step is very important, is that we need to be okay ourselves. We need to be in a good place to be able to do that. If we are struggling, if we are not in a good place, if we are not okay ourselves, it's really hard to be able to help someone else. Actually, probably we end up doing things, making things worse. So that's a key thing that we need to consider and be honest with ourselves. As I said with the two-hat example before, you can push it and you can continue doing regardless, but that won't have good results. So it's important to be honest with ourselves. Once we're okay, we can proceed with the next step. Also, the fact of being honest and saying, I need some time, it humanizes us and shows to the other people, to the team, etc., that we are human and we need some time off, that we are going through something tough and we need that day off, and say, he did it, I can do it as well. So that's really important. Okay, so how do we do this? Of course, this is the new set of skills that we're talking about, the two different things about the communication and how to do that and how crucial it is the lifeline to your team, to the employees, to your teammates, to your colleagues. And it's key to have it there. So it could be, we know it, but do we actually do it? I know many examples that it doesn't happen. Maybe the documentation is there, how things should be, but it doesn't actually happen. And it has real repercussions in the end product. So genuine communication is very important. So I wrote that genuine communication, genuine connections. When you exchange with other people, the managers, you may find some that prefer a more professional relationship, a more strictly work connection. But I came here to tell you that maybe a more genuine, closer connection, we're creating trust and creating a truthful environment can make a really positive impact. And by a genuine connection, a very close connection with the team and your employees, I don't mean being best friends forever and hanging out every Saturday. What I mean is truly listening. Great managers are great listeners, and truly listening and caring about that person. Maybe you're talking about your family, your pets, your hobbies, or maybe you're telling me about problems with your hardware or your software. Every little thing, I genuinely listen and I genuinely then apply solutions to it. Let me see. So I'm telling you, yes, you need to have that very close connection, close relationship. That enables us to, why is important? Because it enables us to spot and see what is going good and what is going wrong. If we don't do it, we may miss it. And of course, it takes time. You may say, oh yeah, that's great, of course. Yeah, we'll talk to everyone every day for hours. But it takes time, it takes effort, and in turn, it takes money, it takes resources. Why would I do that? Sometimes I just don't have the time. And that takes us to this slide, where we see that it is really important. And we see very good examples in the last few years in the industry where truly happy teams in a good place, they can produce great work. Because we're here to make great games. And the state of mind of the team is crucial. So that close and genuine connection and relationship and understanding what's wrong to the, let's say, microscopic level, it enables to apply solutions, genuine solutions, which it may be vacation, it may be reduce the workload, it may be some time off, whatever it is. But we actually remove obstacles for the people to get to making a great work. So I remember back at uni and college studying about Henry Ford, and Ford car maker. And it was fun because he was starting, we know that we need to thank him for the 40-hour work week, and the way we are here right now is many things thanks to him. And I remember the first things he did, he was trying to play music in the production line where they were making the cars. And just by that little change, you may know about it, already increased the productions of the cars. So just one little change, making more comfortable the employee, it increased the production. How, for us, that we are in a creative industry, creating art, literally, we're creating stories, characters, environments, worlds out of nowhere, how can a person in a dark place, not in a good spirit, how can we create anything like that? How can we create art from a bad place? So if it worked for creating cars, for manufacturing cars, it definitely should work for us making games. So if we go the other way around, what we want is a great game. And of course, this is a business, so we want, the conclusion is we want a great game that makes us lots of money, of course. How do we do that? We need that great team that is in a great place to make that great game. Otherwise, it won't happen. How do we do that? Well, we can enable that team, removing those problems. And how do we know about those problems? Well, we establish that genuine and close connection where we can find out about those details, about the well-being, mental well-being, and some subtle things that we can only discover through that very close connection. Now, as a quick summary of what we learned today, because I'm running out of time here, we learned that management done wrong has a really high rate of failure. And it's something that we shouldn't underestimate and jump into it. Like I heard many testimonies, you just jump into it and then you regret it. So it's something that you shouldn't underestimate. And we learned how important it is to avoid burnout and how management is not the only path. That's one big change we should understand in this industry. Lastly, we understood how important is the influence that we can have in the team as a whole, in the whole mental and health of the team, and how communication can help us so much with that. It's all about communication, genuine communication, at least for me. So hopefully, this talk will help to make a better industry, one that we can make better games and in a healthier environment. So with that, I really thank you for being here and for listening to me. So thank you very much. Thank you.